It's called Cuban Economic Reform, Status and Prospects. And we're going to have 3 papers. The first one will be by Nicole Castater, or more or less close enough, from Barry University. And it's titled Cuba Through the Looking Glass, a Study of Reform with Mirrored Data. That will be followed by a paper by Bill Messina. And by the way, Nicole is with Barry University. That'll be followed by Bill Messina from the University of Florida. And his paper is called Cuban Agriculture After the Party Congress. What's next? Who's next? Fooled again. There are question marks at the end of each one of those. And then finally, we'll have Osmar Laffita Rojas, a periodista independiente from Cuba, who will present a paper called La actualización del modelo económico no es sinónimo de reforma. And as discussants, we will have Gary Maverdock and Antonio Galloso. So without further ado, I think we will start the papers going. Given the time that we have available, I would ask each of the presenters to take no more than 15 minutes. Hard 15-minute stop.
Don't worry.
And then so we can give the discussants about 10 minutes apiece. And I will keep time for the time being until Oscar turns up and turn it over to him. So Nicole, if you would, please.
Thank you all very much, and thank you, George, for agreeing, and for the ASCE for agreeing to listen to my paper. This is actually a very preliminary study entitled, as he stated, Cuba Through the Looking Glass, a study of reform with mirror data. My basic research question, is how has Raul Castro's reform announcements of 2008, the ones he made in 2008, affected Cuba's economy? Now, what I've found with my study of past communist regimes is usually the announcement of reforms means basically nothing. So I wanted to kind of form a preliminary event study, not just looking, say, at Cuban reported data, but looking at mirror data from those trade partners of what their trade with Cuba has been both before and after certain key dates. And I managed to collect from the United Nations through the International Trade Center and Comtrade data dating from 1994 through 2014 for all of the major trading partners. And so I also looked at 3 years before and 3 years after, 5 years before and 5 years after the trade data for before and after the 2001 recession, 2006 when actually Raul Castro took power, as well as 2008 when he announced the reforms, to see if there was any difference, if there seemed to be any key date within the period of time of where things may have changed. And as I said before, instead of looking at Cuban data, I actually looked at the data reported by Cuba's trading partners. How much in trade value of goods did they receive from Cuba? How much trade value and what was the value of goods that they shipped to Cuba during certain years? So my hypotheses are that coincide with a simple t-test. So the null hypothesis is that there is no significant difference between trade value. Bilateral trade value means collected before and after 01, 06, and 08. The alternative then is that there is a significant difference in means from before to after 01, 06, and 08. So the method is I looked for the largest trading partners, and I also, because I also looked at BRICS countries, those BRICS countries that were not part of the top 10, and quite a few are, but also added any remaining BRICS countries to that. So there was a total of 13 total countries I looked at, for before and after data. T-tests are performed to determine whether the trade value, these are bilateral trade value means. These T-tests are two-sample, two-tailed T-tests. So trade value means of the periods before and after the focus year. So whether that focus year is 01, 06, or 08. The data, as I said before, is collected from the trading partners and reported to through the International Trade Center and Comtrade, which are both United Nations. So this is just briefly the 3 years before, the 3 years after 2001. I did not include the actual event years, just to prevent any confusion for the purpose of this study. And the same thing for 5 years before and 5 years after. Okay. So the countries in the sample, the largest trading partners that I could discern, China by far is the largest trading partner with Cuba, followed by Canada, and then between Italy, Germany, Brazil, Argentina, Lefso, Spain, the USA is part of the top 10 trading partners, Mexico and Venezuela. And then the BRICS countries that aren't included in that are the Russian Federation, India, and South Africa. Okay. This was one of the trade maps that was created by the International Trade Center. So you can see the degree of trade from Cuba to China because the thickness of the line means it's by far the largest trading partner. Okay. Okay. And I also looked at bilateral trade, so this is imports and exports. These are imports and exports from the point of view of the trading partner. So an import for the trading partner is an export from Cuba, and an export from the trading partner is an import to Cuba. And so we can see here from 1994, 2006 seems to be a really huge year for bilateral trade. Okay, followed then and I want to actually test whether that population 2 to 3 year or 3 to 5 years before those focus states are significantly different than after. Okay. So the event study results, 2001 showed no significant difference, 3 years or 5 years, nothing. Now that probably has to do with the fact that Cuba was very isolated from the United States, where this was the primary focus of the 2001 recession. If you look at 2008, when he actually announced the reforms, before and after, no significant difference between those two, both 3 and 5 years before and after. The one significant year is 2006. Okay, before and after 2006, for whatever reason, okay, there seems to be more trade activity after 2006 than there is before, both on a 3 and 5 year basis. Okay. So just to look at the means for 2008, the mean for 3 years before was approximately 308 million. After, about 549 million. Okay, all of this trade value in US dollars. The mean before 5 years, 264 million. After, 530 million. Okay. So my main conclusion is that the trade levels are higher, significantly higher after 2006 than before 2006. Now the reasons for this are many. Okay, it could be a more accepting stance of the policies under Raul Castro. I don't think so, but all right. Raul Castro actually getting out and promoting trade among major trading partners. Okay, the continuing growth of the private sector in Cuba that started under the special period during peacetime, kind of went underground and then was re-allowed again went official again under the reforms of Raul Castro. the emergence of BRICS economies that wanted to invest in more emerging economies like them, and an increase in remittances to Cuba, okay? Rebuilding after hurricanes, okay? In 2005, in the fall of 2005, Cuba was hit by hurricanes Rita, Wilma, Dennis, and Katrina. All right? So anyone who lived in Florida during that time knows that those were not very nice hurricanes at all, okay? Or a combination of these factors, or factors I have not yet foreseen, okay? So that is basically the bit of research I've done to present to you today. Future research tracks, I did not include any type of service trade in this particular, I only looked at commodity trade, and service trade is growing by leaps and bounds in Cuba, so that's something I need to research, and also investigate the factors behind this increased trade. Okay. Any questions? That's it. I think I beat the 15-minute hard line.
Congratulations. First of all, my apologies. I was detained downstairs at the luncheon with a group of very talkative colleagues. So the next speaker is, and you all know the speaker, so I will dispense with trying to say how important, how knowledgeable they are. Muy buen paper, very good. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a real pleasure to be here at the ASCE meetings. They're my favorite meetings every year. I learn so much being here with respected colleagues, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. The last couple years, I have done presentations here at ASCE that were on trade-related issues, because that was the area of great interest to U.S. agriculture in particular, and Florida agriculture to a certain extent. Cuba's purchases from the United States, their purchases from other countries. So this year was a good chance for me to kind of change gears and look at some production issues. And there's a question in my mind on production that I want to try to tackle, and this is the earliest stages of the thinking on this. And the question is, why does Cuba's agricultural sector seem so unresponsive to changes, policy changes that are going on? And that's the theme I want to pick up on or address in this particular presentation. Now you're asking, all right, how do we go from there to the crazy title of this paper? And I'm probably going to have to change the name of the paper. I got a little crazy, but there's a story behind it. I'm sitting in my office one evening. I'm thinking about the paper. I'm thinking about the ASCE theme for this year, what's next, listening to some music, and a record album comes on. The album's entitled Who's Next? Some of you in this room are old enough to remember a band called The Who. 1971, great album, Who's Next? And Roger Daltrey on vocals, Pete Townsend, guitar and synthesizer, Keith Moon on the drums, John Entwistle on bass, all rock and roll classics, you know, rock and roll Hall of Famers. The anchor song on this particular album is a song called Won't Get Fooled Again. So we've got what's next, pardon me, what's next is the ASCE theme. Who's next is not a statement about political succession. Fooled again, see my thinking here. Won't Get Fooled Again is a song that was written by Pete Townsend, and it was designed to be critical of revolution and political power. And I would sing the chorus to you, but you'd appreciate it if I just repeat the words. So I'm going to read them here, or repeat them from memory, actually. I'll tip my hat to the new Constitution, take a bow to the new revolution. I guess mix those up. Smile and grin at the change all around. There's actually two lines I left out. Pick up my guitar and play, just like yesterday. Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We won't be fooled again. And I'm wondering, are the changes that have gone on, the policy changes that have taken place in agriculture, been meaningful? Or are they just trying to fool farmers and ranchers in Cuba and the Cuban people into thinking that the changes are meaningful? That's kind of the question I want to try and tackle here. Stop and think about it. The policy changes that have taken place in Cuba's agricultural sector since the collapse of the Soviet Union are more significant than the policy changes in any other sector of Cuba's economy. This is a list of a few of them. Started out with the breakup of the state farms in 1993, opening of the agricultural markets in 1994 in response to the food shortages in the summer of 1994 that led to the last rafters crisis. Two huge changes, and our economist colleagues that we work with at the University of Havana were all excited. They were saying, you know, agriculture is leading the way towards a more market-oriented economy in Cuba. 1994, the economic collapse after the dissolution of the Soviet Union pretty much bottomed out in Cuba, and as soon as the economy started showing even the least little sign of growth, the policy changes stopped for agriculture for a while. If we move forward, the late 1990s, the Cuban government starts to introduce a whole series of other policy adjustments. These are just some of them that are listed here. Ended with the lineamientos in 2011, or didn't necessarily end with the lineamientos, but that was certainly a pivotal document. Despite all these changes, here's a graphic looking at Cuba's agricultural production, non-sugar. This is non-sugar. Looks like it's on a good track up through about 2004, and then it starts to fall in 2005 and 6. Hurricanes, not an insignificant factor on that. And then it remains pretty stagnant here. A little bit of increase maybe in 2013. What's particularly surprising and troubling maybe is the fact that there really hasn't been more responsiveness of the agricultural sector since 2011, since the lineamientos. Another question that I want to try and tackle is why that big decline. Some of it's hurricanes, but then why didn't it recover if it was just hurricane related? So I want to try and tackle some of these. The agro-industrial chapter in the lineamientos was the second largest in the document from the 2011 Party Congress. There is some fluff in there, some rhetoric, but there's also a pretty good recipe for introducing more market-oriented policies into the Cuban agricultural sector, and you can see some of the different policy issues listed here. But still, you know, going back to that slide I looked at just a moment ago, even after the lineamientos, we don't see much change, but I'll come back to that in just a second. Why such limited progress in agriculture? I think there's three fundamental reasons. I think one of them is bureaucratic intransigence. I'd heard it, I'd read it. In March, I was in Cuba, and I heard a Cuban government official say something to the effect, people in Cuba have been used to telling other people what to do for a long time, and it's a hard habit to break. And I think that's the core issue right there. The mid-level bureaucrats are having a hard time relaxing the control over agriculture that they've had for so many years, and not just in agriculture, but particularly in agriculture. I also think lack of investment is a huge issue, and lack of inputs. We want to take a look at that because I think that's an important factor too. This is the same graph as we looked at before, but I've added the 2014 data, which was recently released, and it looks like it's increasing a little bit. But citrus is in decline in Cuba. If you look on the left, the second colored bar from the top is kind of a light brown or a tan. That's citrus production back in 2000. And if you look across, you'll see it's just barely a sliver that you can hardly see over in 2014. Citrus is impacting this graphic representation of Cuba's non-sugar agricultural production. So what happens if we take a look at the citrus production here. A couple key events, the loss of the Soviet market there in the early years, then foreign investment. A number of countries, a number of companies started to invest in Cuba's citrus industry, and you can see the recovery that took place. Hurricane, 2005. I'm going to come back to this particular dip later. Citrus greening, or Huanglongbing HLB virus, is devastating Florida's citrus industry, and we're pouring millions of dollars into research trying to figure out a cure or a way to treat HLB. Cuba doesn't have those resources, so I think there are some serious concerns about Cuba's long-term viability of their citrus industry. If you take citrus out of that graph, I think it's a little better representation. This is non-sugar, non-citrus production, and you can see a little bit more of an increase happening here in the last couple of years. So that's an interesting sign. All right, now this is a graph with the vertical axis in percentage. So all of the time series starts way back in 1989 at 100%. And what we're trying to glean here is look at the shifts in production that have taken place since 1989, with 1989 as a base, basically. You see some declines through about 1993, 94. You see a slight increase, 95, 96, 97, 98. Things look like they're picking up. They peak in 2004, Remember, that's what we'd seen in that other graphic. Drop in 2005 for most of them, again, hurricane-related, and then some fluctuation. Now, what I want to point out again, the top line on this, it's gray on mine, it looks a little brown there, is dry beans. Remember, these are percentages. Dry bean production is nowhere near as large as viandas or vegetables, but its increase is larger. So this is not magnitude, it's relative percentage change from 1989. Let's look the same sort of graphic for sugarcane production and fertilizer imports, and look at the correlation there. It's really quite astounding, really. Now, there's a lot of other things going on, certainly. The loss of the Soviet market for sugar in Cuba caused some of that decline. Initially, there were acreage declines associated with that. Hurricane damage, it does do damage to sugar, although not as much as some other crops. Look what happens when the fertilizer imports drop substantially. Look at what sugar production does. And some of the other crops also showed some significant declines in production during this period. And then for sugar, you see some significant increases in the last few years, even though fertilizer imports are not increasing, and that's a result of Brazilian investment. We'll talk about that. In the late 1980s, Cuba was producing about 8.5 million tons of sugar. They are nowhere close to that figure now, but still, a 60% increase in sugar output over about a 4-year period is significant, and that is a result of Brazilian investment in field equipment, mill investment, management, and we saw it right at the beginning. It just started in 2011. These are some brand new Case IH sugarcane harvesters, but they're made in Brazil. Case IH is an American company, but the harvesters were made in Brazil. You've got field tractors and cane carts. You've got hose reel irrigation systems. You've got center pivot irrigation systems. Not all of Cuba, by any stretch of the imagination, not all of their sugar industry has these kinds of additions, but there's some of the investments and some of the new equipment that we saw at one particular farm. I want to talk just briefly about capital. We don't have a whole lot of time. Basically, Cuba has none. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Cuba hasn't had any internal capital to invest. They have gotten some foreign investment, but the foreign investment has all gone toward export crops, and the reason for that is there's plenty of pent-up demand in Cuba, but it's not effective demand as measured in terms of ability to pay. Salaries are so low that people just can't afford to pay for the products, so as a result, we have some investment in citrus, and that was for the export of fresh citrus and processed juice to Europe. Shellfish, shrimp, and lobster, same thing, European firms investing for exports of those crops to Europe. Rum for global shipment, cigars, perfect. For extra cigars for shipment to the rest of the world. There was a greenhouse vegetable operation that was started by Sherritt International. They're the Canadian firm that's been investing a lot in Cuba's nickel industry. The goal there was to produce for the tourist industry, for the tourist hotels. They were threatened by the State Department, so information on the status of that greenhouse operation has been impossible to get, so I don't even know whether it still exists. And then we see sugar, the recent investment in Brazilian sugar. Brazil has not invested a lot in Cuba, but you can see the immediate impact it had on production and productivity down that way. And I think that's a perfect example of how important foreign investment is going to be for Cuba's agricultural sector. And I think this experience could easily be replicated for most any commodity sector in Cuba if they can get the foreign investment. Last slide. What's next? Getting back to the ASCE theme, we've seen some progress, more than maybe we would have expected if we look at the long-term trends since 1989. I expect to see continued slow but steady growth in Cuba's agricultural output, non-sugar and non-citrus production. Sugar may well increase if the Brazilian investment in Cuba's sugar industry continues. Citrus, because of citrus greening, it remains a big question. The single largest investor in the citrus industry in Cuba was an Israeli firm, or a Panamanian firm with Israeli principles, and they pulled out about 2 years ago of Cuba, and I think it was a reflection of the problems with greening. So I don't know what's going to happen longer term with citrus, and if the Cuban government would allow more imports of fertilizer, I think that could have a very significant impact on agricultural production. Foreign investment, I don't expect much foreign investment in Cuba until they have access to the U.S. market. I think that's going to constrain foreign investment for a while. Going back to fertilizers for a minute, just a real quick story and then I'll wrap up. When we go out to farms in Cuba, it's not uncommon. We always jump in a little bus with our collaborators from the University of Havana or a little minivan or something, and we always pick up someone from the Ministry of Agriculture, and you go to cooperative and you sit in the cooperative room and they talk about the fantastic things they're doing with organic agriculture and how organic agriculture has been a commitment on the part of the revolution since 1959, which isn't really true, but they say it anyway. And they have done some amazing things with low-input agriculture, although when they say organic, they use the term loosely. But once you break up and you walk out in the field with a farmer and you're talking about their organic agriculture, they say, yeah, boy, but if I could just get some nitrogen on this crop, my yields would go up pretty substantially. So with that, I'll wrap up. I hope I stayed within the time frame. Thank you all very much. Look forward to questions and discussion.
You take two and a requirement. Oh, good. Well, the last paper is all yours.
Actualización del modelo económico no es sinónimo de reforma. Es el tema que voy a abordar hoy aquí. Los apuntes de mi ponencia abarcan de manera bastante resumida un conjunto de temas que por razones desconocidas no han sido objeto de estudio como realmente se merecen por instituciones académicas especializadas en la economía cubana, radicada tanto en Cuba como en Estados Unidos. He decidido que mi trabajo aborde esos temas de manera bastante puntual, sin agobiar con cifras ni tediosos tecnicismos, a lo que, por lo general, nadie le presta su debida atención. Mi ponencia, de aprobarse, formará parte de los debates del evento de ASCE que celebramos hoy, a celebrarse en los días 31 y 2 de julio, 31 de julio y 2 de agosto en la ciudad de Miami, estado de la Florida. Preámbulo. Es sumamente interesante que el tema escogido para la conferencia de ASCE, Cuba, ¿qué es lo que viene?, la cual abordará los cambios que pudieran darse después de los anuncios del presidente Barack Obama y Raúl Castro del restablecimiento de relaciones diplomáticas entre ambos países. Sería arriesgado, amparado en ese nuevo escenario, afirmar que el gobierno cubano se decide a romper con toda una serie de ataduras políticas y emprender la tan ansiada reforma. No creo que sea probable en estos momentos. Precisamente, mi ponencia gira en torno a este polémico asunto. Trato de explicar que tales reformas en estos momentos no son posibles. Hace ya un año, el gobierno anunció que se tomaron las providencias pertinentes con mira a las condiciones objetivas, con el fin de anunciar en su momento el día cero, que será el momento que se produzca la unificación monetaria y cambiaria. Pero este asunto, donde participan muchos sujetos de la economía, pasó a la categoría de secreto de Estado. Se desconoce cuál es realmente la situación en que se encuentra este proceso, que está estrechamente vinculado a la capacidad de producción de bienes y servicios y a la acumulación monetaria que permita responder al impacto que un fenómeno de esta naturaleza provocará. Por eso hay que tener mucho cuidado para no caer en la especulación si no se dispone de cifras creíbles que permitan una discusión sobre este tan sensible asunto. En lo referente a la situación de la agricultura cubana, se puede afirmar que hace ya varios años que ésta arrastra todo un rosario de incumplimiento como resultado del mal trabajo y la ineficiencia de las empresas agrícolas estatales. De las 366 empresas que existen en Cuba actualmente, la cuarta parte de ellas, el pasado año reportaron incumplimientos y pérdidas millonarias. Esas empresas se han convertido en una pesada carga al presupuesto del país, el Estado se vio obligado a destinar 2.000 millones de dólares para importar alimentos que la mayoría de esas empresas no pudo producir. Les recomiendo que se remitan al informe del ministro de Economía y Planificación en la Asamblea Nacional del 15 de julio, donde él explica detalladamente esto que estoy diciendo yo aquí. Los principales culpables de la carencia, el gran problema de la agricultura cubana radica que no se explotan como es debido los millones de hectáreas de tierra apta para el cultivo, 6 millones de hectáreas. Grandes extensiones de esas tierras están infectadas de hierba, de malas hierbas y malabú. Los principales culpables de la carencia de alimentos son los bandoleros de cuello blanco de la Dirección de la Agricultura, de la Nación, de las provincias y los municipios, que controlan la compra y venta de las cosechas de los campesinos y usufructuarios de tierra, lo que les permite imponer los altos precios oligopólicos en la red de mercado minorista donde se vende. El tema precedente, sumado a la Ley 118 de inversión extranjera, la Zona Especial de Desarrollo de Mariel y los secretos muy bien guardados de la política crediticia, la actividad financiera, el pago de los servicios de la deuda y todo lo relacionado con la actividad bancaria, propiciarán en los 3 días que dure esta conferencia un rico debate que necesariamente tendrán que concluir con propuestas concretas dirigidas a producir los necesarios cambios que tanta urgencia hoy exige la economía cubana. Primero, la conceptualización del modelo económico vigente en Cuba, aprobado en el 6º Congreso del Partido Comunista, descansa en los 313 lineamientos en los económicos. En torno a este asunto, el gobierno ha dejado claro que el enfoque teórico y académico para garantizar su puesta en práctica y garantizar su continuidad se ha sin romper los límites vigentes, lo que no es otra cosa que la propiedad del Estado sobre los medios de producción. La cohabitación en el sector de los servicios, junto con el establecimiento de propiedad del Estado de un insignificante número de pequeños negocios privados, mayo del 2015, medio millón de personas dedicadas a la actividad privada, de 4 millones de trabajadores que hay en Cuba. Permiten, en parte, una redistribución leonina del mercado, en la que los diferentes actores no están en igualdad de condiciones. Los sujetos autorizados a desempeñar la actividad privada no gozan de ventajas y prerrogativas de las empresas estatales y tampoco de las cooperativas no agropecuarias, que sí tienen el acceso al mercado mayorista y a otras ventajas crediticias. A 5 años de gobierno de Raúl Castro siguen siendo personas naturales, no jurídicas. Por tal motivo no tienen ningún derecho. El gobierno cubano ha dejado bien claro que la actualización del modelo no se puede entender ni interpretar como reforma, porque no está dirigida a producir cambios estructurales en el actual régimen de propiedad. La susodicha actualización hay que entenderla como el desarrollo a forma menos administrativa de dirigir la economía, pero sin renunciar a la planificación como método único de dirección de la economía. Por tanto, no hay espacio para el mercado. Reitero, el informe de Murillo en la Asamblea Nacional del 15 de julio que aborda este asunto. Voy a referirme a Murillo ahora. Marino Murillo, al intervenir en la sección final de la reunión del Consejo del Banco Internacional de Inversiones, el único organismo que quedó de desaparecido Consejo de Ayuda Mutua Económica, CAME, advirtió: Murillo, el gobierno cubano realizará las transformaciones para hacer más eficiente la economía cubana. Pero esto no puede interpretarse como cambios estructurales, sino que la actualización del modelo hay que entenderlo como la modernización de los recursos. Con el propósito de dejar bien sentado que el gobierno cubano no aplica ninguna reforma a la economía, Murillo en esa reunión señaló: no se debe confundir la transformación de la propiedad con la modernización de la gestión, que son dos cosas diferentes. La actualización del modelo económico, su fundamento teórico y académico, están recogidos en el 80% de los lineamientos aprobados en el sexto Congreso del Partido en 2013. Pero hay que entenderlo como la modernización de la gestión, hacer la propiedad estatal más eficiente, que permita un amplio desarrollo de las fuerzas productivas. Pero esto no se puede entender como un cambio de estructura de la propiedad estatal. Esto debe quedar bien claro. Aún sin definir actualización del modelo económico, que en el pleno del partido de la semana, hace 2 semanas, Raúl planteó que va a ser en el séptimo Congreso que se va a conocer la actualización, séptimo Congreso. Aún sin definir, sí, aún sin definir actualización del modelo económico que se aplica en Cuba, ni por asomo tiene que ver con el Dumoy, la reforma que desde 1986 se aplica en Vietnam, donde hay una economía de mercado orientada al socialismo. Eso es palabra terrorífica para Raúl y Fidel Castro. Caracterizada por las empresas en un régimen de libre mercado y el abandono de la planificación y la colectivización. La actualización del modelo económico cubano también está a años luz de las reformas económicas que desde 1978 se aplican en China y que produjeron un fuerte crecimiento económico que ha permitido que esa economía sea la segunda del mundo. El gobierno cubano ha dejado bien claro que la planificación y no el mercado primará en la conducción de la economía. A la planificación tienen que atenerse las empresas para el cumplimiento de sus planes. Voy a poner el punto final aquí, un detallito simple aquí, a terminar. El gobierno del presidente Raúl Castro, en los más de 6 años que lleva en el poder, no ha hecho el menor amago para entrar en un serio proceso de reforma de la actual Constitución, porque las leyes y los decretos, las leyes, decretos y resoluciones son violatorias de la Constitución cubana. Por tal motivo no tienen vigencia. Es decir, la espada de Damocles del gobierno siempre está en el aire, rondando a los propietarios particulares. Está en el aire, es como una espada, es un aura, es un buitre de negro que está volando ahí constantemente. Como se ha podido apreciar en los diferentes cuerpos legales puestos en vigor en todo este periodo, el mandatario cubano ha sido un contumaz violador de la Constitución, porque todo lo que ha legislado en lo referido al ordenamiento de la actividad económica es violatorio desde el punto de vista constitucional. Para que haya reforma, tiene que haber una reforma constitucional. Muchas gracias. He terminado.
Just given responsibility of talking about Nicole's paper, Cuba Through the Looking Glass, a study of reform with mirror data. I really want to say, first of all, looking at mirror data is very interesting sometimes. In the 1980s, I was the senior economist in the Africa Bureau, Department of State. And one of our embassies did a study of Nigerian imports. And surveyed the 5 largest trading partners, and they reported that they had exported to Nigeria maybe about $5 billion. I don't know these exact numbers right anymore, in goods. On the Nigerian side, they were reporting like $11 billion in imports. And the general feeling was, I mean, it's enormous, is that this was simply the exchange rates allowed for over-invoicing. And so a heck of a lot of people making a heck of a lot of money. So I think mirror data can be very, very useful. Nicole's study basically does a statistical test to see whether or not total trade, exports and imports, varied between various key years in the in recent Cuban history, choosing 2001, 2006 being the year that Fidel left power, and 2008 the economic world recession. And shows mostly a statistical significance for the before and after 2006. So I really have only 2 comments on that. One, I think in looking after 2006, somebody else would need to check this. We started getting a lot of, Cuba started receiving a lot of credits from China. And when I was there last year, I was really impressed by, to the extent there are any consumer goods available, how it was absolutely dominated by Chinese goods. And to the point that some of the manufacturing industries in Cuba, textiles, which never was very big, and plastics, which used to have a good-sized factory in Santa Clara, had essentially all closed and have been replaced by by Chinese goods. Also, if you went into the dollar stores and looked at goods, or even some of the that you could buy in terms of prepared foods, there was far less then than there was back in 97, 99. You still had pureed tomatoes, and you still had some fruit juices, but it looked like the processed food industry had virtually collapsed. Replaced, interestingly, a lot by Ecuadorian goods. And I think Ecuador has given some credits to China, to Cuba as well. So I don't know exactly when these credits started, but it seems to me that could explain some of the imports. On the export side, it seems to me there was no reason that the reform should have caused any increase in Cuban exports of goods. There just isn't there's nothing to export, and the reforms haven't gone far enough to create. So it'd be interesting to break this down between exports and imports and see how that do it. My guess is you'll see imports have gone up, but exports have done very little. But that's just a guess. I didn't have time to look at the data myself. Finally, I just say it'd be very interesting, going back to my earlier comment, it'd be very interesting to compare this mirror data with whatever Cuban data is also available to see how the discrepancies. I'd be very curious to see that myself. Okay. So that was really the paper I was assigned, but I had promised Bill that I would give him a lot of grief on his paper as well. So, especially since he got it to us very late.
Like 5 minutes ago.
Like 5 minutes ago.
I got it to you yesterday.
I got it from you yesterday. He got it to you today, yes. The man who's supposed to come in, I got it 5 minutes ago. I got it about 12 hours ago. But let me say that when I was there in Cuba last year, I would say that the changes in agriculture and agriculture policy have been meaningful. And I say that because that's what the farmers told me. I did visit a lot of small farms, and I universally heard that there had been meaningful changes. You'd have to go back and read my last paper from last year to see what those were, but a couple of them was that the acopio, which not only provided inputs but also set production levels and what you produce, its role has been greatly diminished, and in some cases almost abolished, except that you have to deliver a certain portion of your production to the acopio so it can be used for state institutions like schools, hospitals, et cetera. But to a much larger extent, that's control of the acopios has diminished. On the point about providing fertilizers and adequate inputs, I think that's very interesting, and it goes to a comment I made in the last session that fear of change is really very significant. Talking to an Cuban agricultural economist, I mentioned what I've mentioned before, that in many countries, the suppliers of fertilizer and seed, et cetera, also provide credit. Often in less developed countries, it's done on a handshake. Sometimes the buyers of the agricultural commodities will also provide credit. When that disappears, or when it doesn't exist, can be a real shortage. And that was really true in Nicaragua after the Sandinistas took power. And I think it happened in Salvador as well, and I think it was one of the reasons that the right took over from Duarte, because of the unhappiness of the farmers. So I mentioned this to a Cuban economist and said, what you really need to do is just let the farmers not just buy inputs, but let them import them, or let these trading companies provide it. And his response was, well, of course, this means a major, change in the exchange controls. But even if we did it, how would the farmers pay back the creditors, the people who sold them the seed and the fertilizer? Where would they get the foreign exchange? As a more conventional economist, I'd say, well, foreign exchange should be in the market. To the extent that you get food production up, there's going to be less imports, and in that sense, you might get a lot of the foreign exchange. I didn't go into much more detail than that, and it's more complicated than that. But what struck me was this lack of confidence that things would work, that things would go well. 1 minute, okay. So. And I think that, to my mind, explains a lot, not all, but a lot of the slowness and the pause in reforms. What's going on in Cuba now is Cubans think they are experimenting and trying to look at results. But of course, when you only go half measures, you often don't see even half results. You see something less. So those are my comments. I'll leave it over to my colleague here to really work you over.
Okay. Antonio, all yours.
Well,
Try to answer the 3 questions.
I'm going to start with Messina. Is this working?
You might get a little closer.
Okay. But I must tell you that I was a student in Messina's faculty, and then I became a faculty member, but there's no bias in our comments. My sense is that Cuba remains organized as a 15th century absolute monarchy, where everyone needs to do what the king decides, or they either, if they don't do it, they pay very, very strongly if they try. It's a modern version of l'état c'est moi. What the king says, King Fidel and now King Raúl, has to go. So there is very little flexibility when the orders come from above. But I think the paper from Messina, from Bill, shows with clarity the possibilities and obstacles with possible programs in the Cuban agricultural sector. What are the results of doing X, Y, or Z? Now, there has been some programs in some subsectors. For example, the Brazilian participation, where they have been allowed to do what needed to be done, and there has been a result. Brazilians go, things go to hell. Sorry. But basically, the issue of limitation to free and aggressive economic management of the resources doesn't exist yet. Whether it's a copy of the ministry, the committees, or the leadership, they want to tell them what to do and what not to do. I used to say that part of the failures of the development program of the US was that we would arrive in a country to tell them what to do because we knew. Then we didn't know. We're learning that now. You need to know, for things to work, what the natives want, need, and are willing to do. Otherwise, nothing happens, no matter how much money you pay. And in the case of Cuba, no matter how much you decide. Okay? When it was Raul that said that there were 3 important things in Cuba: breakfast, lunch, and dinner, remember? Because he realized there was a real problem. But they have never been able to do what it needs to be done because as a monarchy, they don't want to lose the throne. Now, that said, okay, we really don't know how much of the illegal economy in agriculture works or how much is produced. I was the chairman of the World Hunger Education Service, and I have been doing research on hambrunas for a long, long time. Now, in Cuba, with all of the shortages, you haven't found people dying of hunger like you do in India or in Pakistan or in quite a few places in the world. So basically, despite what looks to be shortages of all kinds of things, people are not starving. I remember I was in Cuba for an FAO conference with 2 colleagues from the USDA. We were both white, blue-eyed, and they spoke perfect Spanish. So one day I rented an informal car. I was being watched by the state security. The head of FAO was a friend and told me. And I knew Western Cuba very well, and we went to several farms and quite a few places, of course, followed by my escorts. We arrived in Guines at a private farm. And the first question the farmer said was, "Where are you from in the Soviet Union?" "No, we're not from the Soviet Union. We're Americans." "Oh, come on, give me a break." I show him my diplomatic passport. They show them their red passport, the official passport. "Oh my God, I have a cousin in South Miami planting avocados." And then he shows everything around. The driver disappeared. When we went back to the car, there was a turkey in the back of the back seat, and there were loads of things he had bought illegally. Okay? Lots of things. So basically, a lot of people do that, okay? And the farmer told us he was not planting bananas or plátanos by the fence because people would steal them. People who were walking by. I have seen that in Africa, but not in Cuba. So in that sense, there's a lot of production that goes underground that only responds to the market. People buying the stuff at market prices. It is true that some farmers that can go to free market markets, but it's very limited. And I bet you they are being watched. Anyway, I was very surprised, and I was almost laughing at seeing all of the stuff that guy had bought, okay? He showed me a planting of malanga, cocoyam. And I said, "What do you do with this? Do you get fertilizer for it?" No, fertilizer is only allowed for potatoes. Then he smiled, he said, "And I plant the potatoes on top of the hill, I water it, and then the fertilizer comes to the malanga." So all kinds of things like that are going on that we don't really know in terms of quantities. What is the reaction? But the truth is that the reaction to free market prices is very positive because they are running a risk of being arrested, and yet they are responding to the market. Anyway, the real progress and economic welfare of producers will only occur with all of the controls diminished substantively and substantially. They haven't yet. The lineamientos talk about it, they have not been implemented. Now, basically, I wrote a paper years ago, and I shared it with the Cuban FAO ambassador, in which I told him, what you guys need to do is implement the 1959 Agrarian Reform Law. It's a revolutionary measure. It allows for private property, free markets, no controls. He just smiled. He said, well, one do what we can do. Okay? So basically, when you look at the paper of Bill, you can see all of the elements that have to be understood and counted for if we really want the agricultural sector to move forward. He didn't talk about private property, but it's almost implicit. If you have a contract renting land, that is like private property, because you have a juridical, a legal permission. A lot of the crops in this country are produced in rented land. But the renter has a piece of paper that gives him all of the elements of a property. And if they violate it, they go to sue. So I know that this is a first step, and I encourage Bill to continue working on this, and maybe to rehire me in the university.
Rehire.
Yeah, well, I'm teaching microfinance, so that's a different issue. Now I'm going to change to Spanglish, Spanish, if I find it. Okay. Bueno, Osmar, en tu honor, aunque Raúl Castro ha permitido cierta flexibilidad comparado con el pasado, el objetivo de control total y retención del poder absoluto se ha mantenido como el principal objetivo. Así, comparto en gran medida el pesimismo de Osmar con respecto a la posibilidad de reformas decisivas hacia la libertad individual, económica y política en el futuro cercano. Aún así, creo que ya se han sembrado una serie de semillas que pudieran llevar al cubano común y al productor común a entender qué pueden hacer, qué se debe hacer, qué cambios adicionales hay que pasar para que se impulse el progreso generalizado, no el de la pandilla monarquista. Sin embargo, la posibilidad a corto plazo, en mi opinión, de que se amplíen las aperturas o que el pueblo se manifieste agresivamente en búsqueda son pequeñas. Los castigos a la rebelión son fuertes y aún graves. Así que en ese sentido soy pesimista, pero uno nunca sabe cuándo va a haber una explosión. Pasó en Yugoslavia, quizás pase en Cuba. Gracias.
Bueno, tenemos tiempo ahora para la intervención del público, y los que han estado en reuniones que yo he presidido saben que yo tengo dos normas. Preguntas o contradicciones. Lo que dijiste no es cierto, pero no discursos adicionales. Para eso se proponen, y Jorge Pérez López los incluye en la próxima reunión del ASCE. ¿Ok? Levántate y grita. Get up and, oh, there's a microphone here. Oh, there's a microphone there.
Oh, this is the microphone?
Yes, it's about the agricultural production. And I think Gayoso is right, if I understand you correctly, that it's very difficult to measure effective production in Cuba. I mean, if you compare the amount of foodstuff being available in the streets, not only in Havana, but all over the country today, compared to 10 years back, it's completely different. And this is not reflected in the official production figures. I would recommend you, if you go to Cuba next time, that you go to El Trigal, to the wholesale market close to Rancho Boyeros. How much of the trade going on there do you think is reported? I think a minimal part. So I think to look at the figures gives you a very limited understanding. There is one very interesting observation in your paper, if I understand you correctly, and I think it's very important that when you study the development of Cuban agriculture, that you break it down in sectors. And if I understand you correctly, we can say that perhaps the non-state sector of the agriculture has been growing quite substantially. I mean, if you take out the citrus and the sugar production, you have quite good production figures. So I think it's important to make that distinction. But I have one question to you. Do you think that Cuba could have a very significant opportunity in the organic production or the organic agriculture? I believe it has. I don't think they have been really following this opportunity systematically. I don't know why, because it's obvious for us coming to Cuba that so much of production is done without fertilizers, without agrochemicals, and this, I think, is a very, very interesting market for the Cuban agriculture, which they have not been following systematically. Thank you.
I agree with your comment about organic agriculture. Thank you for the other comments as well. I think they're very valid. The organiponicos, the urban gardens, I think do a phenomenal job with organic production systems. But again, I think they use the term rather loosely. I have been to organic gardens where you can smell agrochemicals pretty heavily. So, and I don't blame them. But I think what's going to happen with Cuba is there's going to be parallel development as time goes on. You will see a traditional production sector continue to develop, and I think there will be a segment of the agricultural economy that focuses on organic production and eventually does whatever they have to do to meet organic certification processes and regulations. So I don't think it's going to be one or the other. Certainly Cuba's probably done more with organic agriculture than any other country in the world, I think, at this point.
Which one? What country? What country did you say?
Cuba. Cuba, yeah.
Jorge?
My question is the real question, is for Bill. You mentioned Brazilian investments in the sugar industry. I'm aware of the Brazilian deal on the Cinco de Septiembre mill, but I was not aware of any other investments in the sugar sector. Could you elaborate on those? What are the other investments that Brazil has done in Cuba in the sugar sector?
I don't have an awful lot of detail on that because I think there's a lot of reasons for foreign investors to keep that information confidential because, quite frankly, the State Department on many occasions has tried to sanction or catch foreign investors in Cuba under the Helms-Burton trafficking and expropriated properties. So I don't have an awful lot of detail. They've certainly done some work at that particular mill, but then several farms where we had seen, and I don't recall the names of them right now, I'd have to look back in the notes, where we have seen the new production equipment going in as well. So I don't, in sugar.
For the benefit of all, when you ask the question, please identify yourself so everybody know. We all know Jorge, but please.
Yeah, my name is Pascal Fletcher. Actually, I was going to ask specifically, I'm going to follow up on the sugar. Are we so certain that we can attribute this latest increase to this Brazilian investment? As far as I know, it's 1 mil out of 56 or 50 odd. Okay, so if we don't have the specific figures for that mill, can we be so sure to attribute to that? And the reason I also ask is because, unless I recall incorrectly, in the 90s, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of investment was channeled precisely into the import of fertilizers and was often fixed on specific sugar territories or a cluster of mills by European banks and European commodity trading houses like Pacol, EDF Man, and some of these other trading houses. So there were attempts previously to guarantee those inputs, particularly fertilizers, and they didn't seem to end well. I mean, the sugar kept on dropping. So are we sure that we can attribute this increase to this particular Brazilian investment, or is it too early? I mean, do we have the data to say this increase is because of the Brazilian investment?
Excellent question. Do I have hard and fast numbers? I have to say no. But what we have seen is reportedly about a 60% increase in output in 3 years, and that increase started the year that Brazil started to move the equipment in there. They have only invested in 1 mill, but they have at least 3 farms where they have put equipment in. Now, I will say that when I was down in February, we went to see a sugar mill, and they took us out to the field. And when we got out to the field, there were 2 brand new Case IH harvesters sitting idle in the field. And we said, are they broken down? They said, no, they're running fine. We just don't have cane carts. So there continue to be some problems. I'd like to talk with you more afterwards.
Please identify yourself so everybody
Let me
knows.
see. I don't know if you could listen to me, because tell me if you don't listen to me and then I'll stop talking. But, well, I'm very glad about all you've said, but I have some issues there. One of the greatest achievements of Fidel Castro was the destruction of sugar industry.
You have a question, ma'am?
Just a moment. Well, if you don't want to, I don't talk.
Yes, but
Excuse me.
that, you have a question, well, that was
Okay.
the rule. Okay.
Perhaps we could speak after the session.
Yeah, sure.
I'd like to talk with you. I would. I'd very much like to. Yeah, I'd like.
Jose Gabilondo pregunta.
Great.
O sea, this is addressed to the panel generally. Jose Gabilondo, FIU. What is the smallest amount of change that you would consider a structural reform in the economy? Because my sense in general was that either there have been nothing that has happened counts as a structural reform, or only very little, although Dr. Galloso's point about seeds sounds structural. Because the related question is, aren't there some economic changes that build up slowly, that lag, and then all of a sudden there's a change? So that's the general question.
I can try that. Well, as I was saying earlier, I think there has been some meaningful change. I think that the decline of the acopios and their control over production. They used to tell a farmer, well, in the upper acres you plant this, and the lower acres you plant that, and by the way, I want 4 acres of beans and 1 acre of rice or something else, and a lot of that has disappeared. And I think that's a very meaningful reform, and it does take time to do it. The other is they seem to be cognizant of the need to pay farmers higher prices. That, if it sticks, is also an important, or whether they just did free prices, but at least that's an important change. I think there is some structural change. I can't tell you when it's significant, when it's not significant, but I think there is some structural change.
Jose, rather than take a lot of time right now, the smallest change that would be considered structural, that's a tough question. And I have no idea how to answer it, but I do agree with your statement. Some changes take a while. There's a lag associated with it. It takes a while before you really see the impacts. I don't think there's any question there, but I hate to keep saying this, but rather than bog things down, pick it up after a discussion session.
If it's okay with the panel, I'd rather talk to Omar in Spanish.
Sí, sí, por supuesto.
Mi nombre es Julio César Morales, yo soy agente de bienes y raíces y también invierto en real estate aquí en el sur de la Florida. Mi pregunta para usted, Omar, que a través de Pedro he sabido que usted vive en Cuba, ¿todavía es así? Sí. Pero hemos visto que tanto en Cuba como los cubanos de la diáspora hacemos propuestas para el cambio en Cuba. Unos prefieren hacer el cambio político primero y que después venga el cambio económico. Otros prefieren hacer el cambio económico y que después venga el cambio político. Mi pregunta es usted, ¿qué está haciendo? Para mí, oposición, disidencia o el miembro del partido, son patriotas todos los que de alguna forma están abogando y están reclamando al gobierno de Cuba que haga cambio. En mi opinión, las propuestas económicas tienen más respaldo dentro de los cubanos que viven en la isla, no nosotros. Nosotros a veces hacemos propuestas de acuerdo a las condiciones existentes en Cuba y eso va cambiando diario. Y me pregunto usted, ¿cree usted que sería más factible si la oposición o la disidencia hiciera reclamos económicos al gobierno cubano? ¿No cree usted que va a sumar más personas? Porque yo soy de la opinión que si hacen cambios políticos, no hacen cambios económicos, pues el Partido Comunista va a salir otra vez, porque son los que controlan todos los medios económicos, son los únicos empleadores dentro de la isla, y aunque hagan elecciones, pues la gente va a tener temor y el Partido Comunista va a salir otra vez. Me parece a mí, y le pregunto a usted, ¿cuál es su opinión? ¿Cree usted que la oposición dentro de Cuba debería de hacer reclamos económicos primero o políticos o a la par? ¿Cuál es su opinión al respecto? Muchas gracias. Agradezco a lo que han hecho esto posible, porque aquí podemos intercambiar todo tipo de personas, independientemente de las ideas ideológicas, y sobre todo que han traído personas de Cuba, que para mí es lo más importante, por eso he manejado 3 horas hasta aquí hoy, porque esto es una oportunidad. Gracias.
Pregunta. No la corté.
La pregunta tuya es interesante. Ese es el gran debate nacional en Cuba. Porque hay que partir de la naturaleza totalitaria militar del régimen cubano. Todos los vestigios de libertades en Cuba no existen. La oposición cubana, después que se cayó el muro de Berlín y desapareció el socialismo real, ha sufrido los embates terribles de la dictadura militar castrista. Primero, concilio cubano. Segundo, primavera negra. Tercero, dama de blanco, que es una vergüenza que un régimen utilice sus fuerzas militares para arrematar, golpear y arrastrar a las mujeres. Eso lo hace todos los sábados. La oposición cubana en Cuba no tiene ningún derecho. Somos no personas. El Ministerio de Justicia lleva tu solicitud para que te reconozcan como institución. Hay 2 cosas. Las reciben pero no contestan. Jamás han contestado. Hay un total control de los medios de información del régimen para que el pueblo esté ajeno de lo que pasa con nosotros. Las golpizas, el encarcelamiento, las detenciones arbitrarias que ocurren hasta los días, yo vine, y ocurren todos los días en La Habana. Eso fue el domingo pasado. El domingo pasado cogieron y se arremetieron terriblemente con la dama de blanco, y muchos de nosotros fuimos golpeados. Por tal motivo, decir que la oposición cubana está a favor de los cambios económicos, de los cambios políticos, por la naturaleza del régimen cubano, es un tema bastante complicado. Hay problemas interiores de concepción, de enfoque. Es normal en las sociedades totalitarias y cerradas como la cubana, como lo pasó Rusia y lo pasaron los países socialistas. Pero hay que ver el pueblo de la calle, el tipo de a pie. Ese que gana 35, 23 pesos, dólares mensuales. Ese que realmente pasa las vicisitudes diarias, que tiene que inventar, que tiene que negociar para comer un mes, mal comer un mes. Por tal motivo, ese individuo, cualquier cambio económico que haya, lo va a beneficiar y lo va a aplaudir. Lo va a aplaudir. Yo, quizá a ustedes les llamó la atención que yo hacía insistencia en el discurso, en el informe Murillo. Les voy a hacer una información a ustedes, a los que están aquí presentes. Yo vengo de Cuba. ¿Eh? El gobierno cubano metió en el congelador la actividad privada y cooperativa. La metió el 10 de julio, la metió en el congelador. ¿Cooperativa no agropecuaria? No, cooperativas son estatales. No, las cooperativas son cooperativas. Hay 3 formas de propiedad: privada, estatal y cooperativa. Bien. Hay 387 cooperativas no estatales, de 498 que se aprobaron en el 2011. Raúl Castro, en el discurso del 15 de diciembre, dijo, tenemos que esperar un poco, no se puede seguir. Y Murillo, en su intervención, que es esta que está aquí, esta intervención de Murillo, completa, aquí está. Y Murillo dijo aquí, en casi 2 horas, una hora y media de intervención, no se refirió a 2 cosas, ni a los propietarios pequeños privados, que hay 500.000, ni a las cooperativas. Todo el tiempo de intervención fue dirigida a la empresa estatal, a la planificación, al control. Por tal motivo, ellos están aterrorizados de lo que hemos avanzado en el sector privado y en el sector cooperativo, como lo dijo el señor que habló aquí, algunas cosas que dijo. Bueno, el régimen en estos momentos, todo cambio y toda apertura lo metió en el congelador. Para terminar, Bruno Rodríguez, el 10 en Washington, está casi al lado ahí, porque yo casi me voy a ir. El único cambio que ha hecho Cuba fue en 1959 con la Revolución Cubana. Eso lo dijo Bruno Rodríguez ante el canciller, ante el secretario de Estado. Si el ministro de Relaciones Exteriores dice que el único cambio que se ha producido en Cuba fue en 1959, ¿qué podemos esperar nosotros, señores? La situación en Cuba es complicadísima. Estos señores octogenarios, esta plutocracia que lleva 55 años y que nadie lo haya elegido, porque nadie lo ha elegido, han tomado la decisión de no contar con nosotros. Periodista independiente como soy yo pensaba que no me iban a dejar venir. Lo capaz de fui para el aeropuerto. ¿Qué puedo hacer? ¿Que me quiten el pasaporte? ¿Que me quiten el pasaje? Pero yo fui al aeropuerto.
Ya, diálogo.
Perdón.
Oye. Perdón,
Escúchame, perdón.
Deja que él termine de...
Perdón.
Sí.
Entonces, ¿qué sucede? Que realmente, yo particularmente expuse mi punto de vista de las reformas en Cuba que no hay. Y las argumenté. Esto es un debate. Esto es democracia, ¿verdad? ¿No? ¿Sí? Esto es un Estado democrático. Y como demócrata, cada cual tiene su punto de vista. Yo te contesto eso. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, ya.
Yo creo que debemos volver al azúcar. Vamos a hablar un poquito de caña y de azúcar. Porque ese es lo que yo he hecho en mi vida. Aquí Bill Messina dijo sobre, si tengo notas correctas, que estábamos usando K-Sugar harvesters. Before that, we used Australian harvesters. The problem of the sugar industry in Cuba is not the mill. You know what it is? The field. The sugar is produced on the soil. By the time it gets to the mill, we know already, for years of study, that the mill extracts what is on that plane, in that plant. The problem with the gramínea in Cuba is not necessarily the problem that we apparently look now. We are in the wrong track. The soil has been superly overplowed, dilapidated, and there was a time when I took a field measurement in Cuba and we found 80% of superphosphate on that soil, i.e. cane that is this thick. When I was a kid, it was this big and 6.5 feet. Then you could produce sugar in Cuba. Bill, I don't care whether we have case, magnificent machinery, we could have Australian machinery, we could have the most modern mill in the world. The problem is not that. I don't care what the Brazilian does in Cuba. You know what it is? Put the money on the soil. Put the money to get the nice stock that we can get sugar. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Very good.